Welcome to today's Global Connections program. I'm Bill Miller. Today we're going to talk about international law and the role America used to play and is playing in the situation with international law and being a world leader. My guest today is an expert on this topic. Judge Thomas Moukawsher is a retired Connecticut complex litigation judge and a former lawyer, legislator, and lobbyist. He's the author of The Common Flaw, Needless Complexity in the Courts and 50 Ways to Reduce It. He recently authored various articles on the Supreme Court's immunity ruling and what it means for the Nuremberg Principles. Judge Thomas Moukawsher, welcome to today's Global Connections program.
Thank you, Bill. Glad to be here.
I appreciate you being with me. Things are going so fast we could do this once a week or maybe once a day, the more I think about it. But let's just jump right into it. The United States, for decades, especially after World War II, and with the creation of the United Nations and the International Court of Justice and multilateral institutions, the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund, the United States used to be the world leader in many areas. Where are we today, and how do we interpret what's going on with what I call a surrender or a retreat from our leadership role in the world?
Well, it's not just a retreat, it's a full retreat from the very institutions that we were so instrumental in creating in the wake of World War II, in particular, after the global crisis that woke everybody up to the dangers of not having stable international institutions. And so we have been slipping away from some of them for years, but every opportunity the current President Donald Trump has had, he's taken us even further away. As you know, he withdrew us this year from the United Nations Human Rights Council, from the World Health Organization, from the Paris Climate Agreement. He withdrew all funding for UNRWA, and he's even gone so far as to sanction the International Criminal Court. So when you look at these institutions that were, inspired by American ideals, they now seem to be the complete opposite of American policy, and it's sad to see.
And America was very involved in creating every one of those institutions that you mentioned, and off and on has been very involved to semi-involved. But how dangerous is this to not only to America and to our defense, so to speak, and our ability to operate in the world, but to the world in general, to just draw back and say, well, we'll let China or some other country move into this position, and they will. When there's a vacuum, they will move into it at the UN. You can bank on it. They did it with the World Health Organization. You can't blame them. If one country gives up and leaves, sits on the bench, they're going to take advantage of it. How dangerous is that?
I think it's enormously dangerous because, of course, the United States was the one power that people trusted in the decades following World War II. And to give up the position as the leaders of the free world, as we were called, is disastrously dangerous and destabilizing. We've gone from a system of advocating international norms of behavior to now this concept, which seems to be coming through from Trump policy, of spheres of influence again, the kinds of things that created the rivalries that got us into two world wars, and the idea that we can once again break up into great power games where Russia wants to press its way into Eastern Europe, China to its south, and the United States in dominating the Western Hemisphere is a recipe for disaster, because it just it takes on the motto of might makes right. And I thought that our country stood for the opposite, that law is the thing that makes right.
Mhm. And the makes right certainly sums it up. And it brings back the bad old days of gunboat diplomacy in the Caribbean and South America, manifest destiny with the elimination of Native Americans. It really conjures up all of the history, the bad history of the United States that we don't really want to think about. When we look at this, do you think that that's what the world leaders are trying to do, just carve up the world? You've got China saying we'll take care of the Pacific region. You got Russia saying we want to take care of Europe. America, Trump saying, well, we'll take care of Latin America, that they want to go back to the what really led up to World War One and World War II to some degree.
I think that's absolutely right. And I think we have been the restraining influence, in particular, having taken an initial very strong stand in support of Ukraine and the idea that the old Russian Empire isn't going to be reassembled. And we were the people everyone was looking to in Asia to keep China from taking an expansionist foreign policy. But now I think that underlying everything that is actually the acts of the Trump administration as opposed to their words. It seems like that they're sort of encouraging that sort of thing. You don't hear President Trump saying anything forceful in favor of defending Taiwan. And every day you pick up the newspaper, there's a different attitude he has toward Ukraine. It's one day he's telling them to surrender, and the next day we're talking about a new form of guarantee of security and safety for Ukraine if there's a peace treaty. So it sounds to me like underlying it is this idea that let Russia and China in their neighborhoods get away with whatever they want, and we'll do the same, abandoning all of the countries that share our values in the Pacific region and as well as in Europe, all the countries that shared what used to be American values, a rules-based system and an advocacy for diplomacy over gunboat diplomacy.
Exactly. It seems like what he's doing is transactional diplomacy. And you can't run a country waking up one day, this is our foreign policy or domestic policy, the next day a different one like that. It's almost like a mafia family. You just don't know what to expect. And it really destroys the rule of law in this country, does it not?
Right, right. It does, and it's transactional in more than one way. I think is interesting. Trump would explain that it's transactional in the sense that he wants something for the United States in exchange for any concession we make around the world. But the other flip side of it is what he really wants is something for Donald Trump in every transaction that he's engaged in. We gave a unilateral security guarantee to Qatar recently, and it followed the $450 million airplane and the new resort that country is building with government money to benefit the Trump family. And suddenly we're their military protector. The wonderful new FIFA Peace Prize was just simply a naked bribe to prevent the president of the United States from saying that Boston is too dangerous to hold a soccer competition in, and so on and so forth. The gold that the Swiss gave to Trump and immediately got their tariffs down, and on and on. The transactional nature of these things is not even transactional necessarily for the United States. It's transactional for Donald Trump and his family.
That's very true. Very, very true. It's we've seen there's always some mismanagement with government to some degree. There's always some inefficiencies, malpractice, mispractice, or nonfeasance, misfeasance, malfeasance, that type of thing. But
Absolutely.
nothing of the corruption of this level. And especially with the corporations, how quickly they've gotten on board. They've discovered that from all the readings I've done, that all you have to do is give the money to the right person and you get favors, you get tax breaks, you don't have tariffs applied. It, how are people overseas going to look at us? They're certainly not going to have any faith in this country of the rule of law, will they?
Well, I don't think they do, and I think that I think there's a great deal of concern around the world. I'm going to be doing a forum with the Norwegian Bar Association in a few weeks, and they do an annual panel discussion of where the rule of law and lawyers in particular are in danger around the world. They've done Afghanistan in the last few years, Colombia, Iran, Azerbaijan, and who are they doing this year? The United States of America, where they're saying that both the rule of law and lawyers themselves are in jeopardy because, as you know, President Trump has extorted hundreds of millions of dollars of free legal time from law firms to try to twist them into causes, both national and international, that he personally favors. So if you have, bar associations, international ones like the Norwegian one I'm going to be speaking from, worried simply about the stability of the United States, we all ought to be worried.
We certainly should. And we're going to come back in just a moment and talk about that. Well, you're watching Global Connections Television, which is a privately funded, independently produced program. The opinions expressed on Global Connections Television are solely those of the moderator and his guests. We'd invite our viewers to go to our website at www.globalconnectionstelevision.com. If you're involved with a PBS or community access television station, or perhaps you are with an educational institution that has an intra-campus television hookup, or you have a podcast, or you just have a computer, you like our shows and you would like to share them, please feel free to do so. Global Connections Television is provided at no cost as a public service to help us better understand international issues and how they impact our lives. Today, we're taking a look at the legal system, not only in the United States, but worldwide, and how it is being affected as we go forward and what damage is being done to the rule of law. My guest today is an expert on this topic. My guest today is Judge Thomas Moukawsher, who is a retired Connecticut complex litigation judge and a former lawyer, legislator, and lobbyist. Judge Moukawsher, we were talking about it's even out in the open, bribes, out in the open corruption. You can see what's going on with this supposedly the loss of the East Wing with this new ballroom that's being constructed. The corporations are lining up, to donate to this. And the crazy thing is they're using our money to pay off this ballroom. We all know that from these tax breaks that they received just not long ago. It was just horrific, horrible bill that was passed. It's going to throw millions of people off their insurance, going to raise insurance policies for so many people, knocking children off the SNAP program, all for the sake of billionaires. How can we? Well, we know what's causing it, and there are two other major reasons. One is with a semi-corrupt Supreme Court, and another is a spineless Congress, basically a few Democrats and all Republicans in the Congress. How do we get the attention of, let's start with Congress. What can we do to get them involved and to do their constitutional duty? It's not a matter of an arbitrary decision. They're supposed to do oversight. They've done little to nothing. But what can be done there?
Well, they only have one fear greater than Donald Trump, and that fear is the voters in their districts. And so with the elections coming in 2026, congressional elections coming, that's going to be the major driver. You can see some people are already sidling away from Trump a little bit because they're worried about the folks back home and what the voters are going to make of them come the fall. And only that kind of pressure will ultimately strike a different kind of fear into Congress that might actually cause them to stand up to Trump. I think the thing that most people forget about Trump, though, or too many people have forgotten about Trump, is that Trump is just the classic bully. And the people who in Congress and out who have stood up to Trump have found that he's a paper tiger. And by that, in particular, I would emphasize the law firms I was referring to before that he's extorted so much money from. The ones that stood up to him and went to court simply won. And he wasn't able to do any of the things that he wanted to against them. The others who caved in and gave him money should realize the same thing as the donors to the new ballroom should realize. He'll be back for more once you start giving him things. That's the nature of an extortion racket, is that they come back periodically. And by the way, they usually ask for more the second time than they did the first. And that's what both people in the United States and people around the globe should realize about Trump, is that people should not be appeasing him, because when you stand up to him, you can succeed.
I mentioned about the open wheeling and dealing and the corruption, or alleged corruption, shall we say. But what should the next president and the next Congress do? Should we have a Nuremberg trial for these people? And we're going to talk about the illegal bombings in the Caribbean in just a minute. But should they have Nuremberg trials, criminal trials? What should be done from the legal standpoint?
Well, I think that let's say that the Democrats take Congress. The thing that a lot of them would be itching to do is to bring a third impeachment of Donald Trump. And I don't think they should do that unless they have the votes to convict him in the Senate. They won't have the votes to convict him in the Senate unless they can win a 2/3 majority. That's going to be very tough with Donald Trump. What they could do with their power in Congress, though, is to gather evidence of the crimes that have been committed using the subpoena power of their powerful committees, building a case against Trump and his collaborators, and preparing when an honest Justice Department takes office again to do something along the lines of criminal prosecutions where they're indicated. I just don't think that our system can stand not doing anything about this criminally in the future. But I think another fruitless impeachment is just another fruitless impeachment. What really needs is something that will actually happen. And I think only in the Nixon era was there ever a consensus that a president could actually be convicted in the Senate. And I guess I'd still be surprised, given the hardcore support he has among some people, that there'd ever be the votes to actually convict him.
The political ethics of the people back during the Nixon era were of some politicians were much higher than what they are today. So many of the politicians in Washington, without a doubt. Well, we've got so many important issues to talk about. Let's focus on the Caribbean just for a moment. We've seen that I forget how many strikes have taken place on boats that have been declared, no evidence that I know of. Now, maybe you know or somebody does, evidence that these were people running drugs and that type of thing. But these are extrajudicial killings that have taken place, a violation of international law, a violation of our own laws, to be quite honest, instead of interjecting ourselves and stopping these boats, capturing these people, bringing them to the U.S., putting them on trial, showing the evidence. Those are the types of things that are totally absent from this. How is this being perceived in the judicial community and overseas also?
I think with shock and disappointment, because what has happened here, undermining the very notion of law, is the use of legal terminology to justify these kinds of extrajudicial killings. President Trump believes that he can simply take any group he wants to and label them terrorists and just simply kill them without any process due at all to make sure that they're the people that he says they are and that they deserve something like death for what they're doing. And he continues to simply take legal terminology like the words emergency and call anything he wants an emergency, which justifies the exercise of absolute power, designating people terrorist organizations, justifying again the exercise of absolute and lethal power. And just recently, he's now declared fentanyl a weapon of mass destruction, so that the lines of what a weapon of mass destruction is now become blurred by this ridiculous use of the terminology. And it's only not ridiculous because it brings a lethality behind it that the president wants to use against pretty much anybody he feels should be designated a danger to himself or the United States, I think. And so I think people are rightly alarmed about it, particularly in the Caribbean, if you're a poor fisherman.
And many of them, it's been shown that they were poor fishermen. And they got blown up or attempted to be blown up. Well, your remarks just lead me right to the Supreme Court. And that takes us right into this immunity ruling by the Supreme Court. You've got six justices that are basically in Trump's pocket. You come right down to it. You've got several of them that I know. Um, well, I won't go through them, but three of them are just almost totally corrupt. And they we see that the Supreme Court is ruling in his favor on the really big issues, the big items that come before the court that really benefit him. How is this court viewed, and what did this immunity decision do to upset our whole balance, the constitutional balance in this country?
Well, what it did is it has spurred Trump on to do the very things he's doing right now. Right after that piece, right after the decision came down from the Supreme Court, I wrote a piece for Newsweek about Nuremberg. Could there ever be another Nuremberg? The United States Supreme Court had just indicated that there's essentially no criminal liability for war crimes by the President of the United States because killing these people in the Caribbean under American law, he's immune. It's an official act of the President of the United States. The United States doesn't participate in the International Criminal Court. So who's going to prosecute these kinds of war crimes? The United States simply doesn't recognize any international body it would submit to. And with the immunity decision, the Supreme Court of the United States declared that there's no criminal law that can be used against the President of the United States for these murders, because that's what they really are if you strip away the fig leaf of calling these people terrorists. Now, I think that he has ideological bedfellows on the Supreme Court. I think he has people who would make him happy and the far right happy. I don't think that I wouldn't call them corrupt in the sense that I would call Donald Trump corrupt, because Donald Trump is corrupt in the most traditional way. He takes large gold objects from people and does what they ask him to do. And while I don't think the Supreme Court's doing that, I sharply disagree with the idea that we're making this presidency above the law.
Yeah, and all I'm going on is what I've read and what's been reported. And of course, Justice Clarence Thomas, he's gotten all kinds of freebies from various groups, interest groups, who have cases before the Supreme Court. And I think the Chief Justice, his wife, is getting millions of dollars in contracts, personal service contracts or whatever. But we could do a whole show on that. But we only have about 2 minutes left. I hate to do this, but what would you like to share as far as information or suggestions to the judicial communities in the United States, worldwide, and the people all around the world as to what's going on and what can be done?
Well, I think the United States has to recommit itself to the rule of law, and I think we can do that in a number of ways, including by changing some of the things that the Supreme Court has decided over the recent years. The biggest one is the Citizens United case, which simply put billionaires in charge of who's going to be president of the United States and who's going to represent us in Congress. And I also think that we should overturn what they have said about gerrymandering and the ridiculous lengths, the embarrassing undercutting of democracy in this country by scientific gerrymandering. I think that we should have constitutional amendments on both of those subjects and also on presidential power and corruption. And I think those things should be the focus of trying to reestablish this country after Trump in the esteem of the world.
These issues are so vital and so important, not only to Americans and people around the world, but Judge Thomas Moukawsher, I want to thank you so very much for a very interesting and a very informative program.
Thank you, Bill. It's been a pleasure to be here.
My pleasure. I'm Bill Miller. Thank you for joining us today on Global Connections Television.